This conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good morning, everybody. It's 9:30 a.m. January 11th. I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. And then I will move right into agenda item 2, which is opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make public comment to the Technical Advisory Committee? Is there anybody online that wishes to make comment, Hope? Okay. Moving along to staff update, agenda item 3. This is pages 6 through 7 in your packet. As you'll see in your packet and on the screen. Just a second, we've got to move the slideshow forward, but once we do, you'll see the meeting schedule for our planned meetings. All these meetings are planned for 9:30 a.m. in this room at the SITCOG offices, with the exception of the Freight Advisory Committee being held on January 24th. That one will be at 2:30 p.m., but we'll still be here at this building. Other updates, the Bell County Thoroughfare Plan, staff are continuing to work on that process. We did have a meeting with the Bell County Commissioners yesterday to provide the draft plan. There were some individuals in the audience that spoke to the plan. We had the opportunity for public comment open. James, was that open for 30 days? The Bell County public, that was open for 30 days. It was brought to our attention that maybe we didn't get the word out enough. So Bell County Commissioners have asked us to do another round of public comment period for that, for the Bell County Thoroughfare Plan. So we will be moving forward with scheduling some additional public comment periods and possible public meetings in different parts of Bell County, so citizens can be aware of the plan and provide any comments they may have. The Governor's Community Achievement Awards, those have opened. The applications are due February 16th. Those are the landscape type grants that are awarded by the Governor's office for pretty small projects. I think the total for that program is what, $2 million, James?
Yeah.
Okay.
$2 million.
The MPO Safety Plan funding, I've mentioned before, this is $50,000 that TxDOT is providing to MPOs if they select to accept the $50,000. This will require an amendment to our UPWP once we receive a contract for those funds, and they can be used for anything safety related. So once we get that contract, staff will develop a methodology on how we're going to use those funds and where they may be utilized best, and we'll do the UPWP amendment. The 2020 Census Urban Areas, those populations and urban areas were released December 29th. Populations, as I'm sure everyone is aware, have grown through our region. Specific cities in our region have grown, as well as the urban areas related to the cities. I have those population numbers actually back at my desk, and I can share that spreadsheet with everybody when we send out the follow-up. With that, I know we've talked about the possibility of a boundary expansion at the last meeting and maybe doing a study for that. Right now, I'm waiting on some funding information from TxDOT to see currently where some of our funds stand, and then follow up with any questions I may have on the funding for that. And then I'll need to follow up with what the potential funding impacts may be if we were to expand our boundaries. You know, this could have a negative impact on like the Brownwood district, depending on how far we expanded, or if we even expanded to the west or the east if possible, could have a funding impact on that district, the Bryan district, I believe that is. So I'll need to have some conversations with TxDOT before we move forward with any of that as well. Like I mentioned in the previous meeting, before we do even start the process for the boundary expansion study, that will be brought before TAC and Policy Board to see if that's something they're interested in. just so everybody's aware, the easiest and probably cleanest way to expand the boundary would be to go to the edge of our MSA, which is our Metropolitan Statistical Area. That covers all of Bell County, all of Coryell, and all of Lampasas County. That just really cleans everything up for planning efforts. Like on our dashboard, we had some problems with census blocks and getting everything cut because of the county boundaries. So that's just some things that staff are working through right now. But like I said, I'm waiting on some information on funding before we entertain this, or I bring it back to the TAC next month. I should have some additional information on the funding and what next steps there may be. The federal certification review, we did receive our final copy. This will be sent out to everybody in the follow-up email to this meeting. There were 6 commendations in the certification review, 15 recommendations, and a corrective action. The corrective action was to get the CMP updated within 6 months. So staff are working on that process. That's one of the special studies we have in our UPWP. And then for the recommendations, staff are working to implement those recommendations if they're feasible for what we're doing. They weren't findings, so we're good with those, but that information will be sent out with the follow-up. And one of the last things I have is a summary of some of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023. I have this document. This will be sent out as well to members following the meeting. But for transportation and housing and urban development, the 2023 Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development and related agencies funding bill provides funding of $87.3 billion, an increase of $6.3 billion, nearly 8% above 2022. This includes a discretionary increase of $4.5 billion for the Department of Housing and Urban Development and $1.8 billion for the Department of Transportation. In total, the bill provides $164.9 billion in budgetary resources. For the summary, for the Department of Transportation for fiscal year 2023, it provides $106.3 billion in budgetary resources for DOT, which is an increase of $3.4 billion above fiscal year 2022, and $1.9 billion above the President's budget request for 2023. It includes $800 million for national infrastructure investments. These are the Raise, Tiger, Build grants, including not less than $20 million for grants to assist areas of persistent poverty and historically disadvantaged communities, and an additional $25 million to include a technical assistance and capacity building program to spur thriving communities. It has funding for research and technology, $19 billion for the FAA, $873 million for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and $1.2 billion for National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and then $16.9 million for the FTA, which includes $13.6 billion for transit formula grants. And that is all for the appropriations. Like I said, I'll be sending this out to everybody following the meeting. You can review it. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to staff. The last thing I have for staff update is the air quality readings, which were 48 and 46 parts per billion, respectively. Did I miss anything, James? Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, we will move to agenda item 4, which is an action item regarding approval of the minutes from the December 7th, 2022 meeting. Are there any questions, comments, revisions needed to the minutes? If there aren't any, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, agenda item 5 is a discussion and action item regarding resolution 2023-01, supporting the fiscal year 23 safety PM1 performance targets for KTMPO established by the Texas Department of Transportation. James.
Thank you, Ryan. Nothing has really changed on this. This is the last time we discussed the safety performance targets, but just for review, there's 5 targets: number of fatalities per million miles traveled, number of serious injuries per million vehicle miles traveled, and number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. The targets are listed here at the bottom, and it's the 2023 target expressed as a 5-year average. These are numbers generated by the state, the TxDOT for the whole state, so that's why they're very high. As discussed at the last meeting, KTMPO is looking at local targets for starting in FY24. 2 more targets. There is a resolution included in your packet. I will note that the date at the bottom is incorrect. It should be 18th of January. We'll correct that before we present this to the policy board next week for their approval. I'll also note, as there is discussion, that no fatality is acceptable, and KTMPO agrees with that. At the top of the resolution, there is a statement supporting Texas Department of Transportation's adoption of the Road to Zero goal. I know Bob specifically mentioned that, and we do want to get to 0 fatalities, but in order to comply, we have to adopt specific targets according to the Mass Act and now the IFGA. Are there any questions?
Well, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Friendly observation. The Transportation Commission has a goal of 50%, I think, 10 years or 0 by 20. We trend our numbers out into the future. How well are we on track with our local stuff? I mean, we don't have local numbers when it comes to this either state like that. How are we trending? Is there, are the numbers that we are asked to adopt, is that on track to hit the 50% mark or the 0% mark? I imagine that graph would be like this. It's not going to be a straight line to the bottom. I'm just curious, what I was thinking about that earlier.
Well, I can tell you,
What did we say?
Victor, maybe you have similar insight from TxDOT, but I know I've seen a lot of data that since COVID, the last 3 years, those numbers have not decreased. And that's sad news, but there's been increases across the board, and not just in Texas, in the whole nation, for fatalities, pedestrian, driver, I mean, everybody. And so it is a serious issue. I know there's a lot of good people working on how to solve this issue, but in the end, it's so complex that it's hard. We all have to do it together. But the answer to your question about the numbers, the trends are not promising. They were, I think, in 2018, 2019, more promising. In the last few years, they've reverted to increasing.
So I guess I'm sort of kind of advocating for can't be much anything to stay away from those. It's higher than last year. And so I'm not going to go against this resolution. We have to do something. We need to, I think we're going to work on that on our next item. And so thinking about, we're trending down or wanting to trend down, that's a conscious decision. We should think about numbers that are lower than previous back to numbers. So anyway, that's my friendly thought.
Did they not provide regionalized breakup?
They may, in this on pages 18 to 20 of the packet, that's from the state's plan, that's what was sent to all MPOs. I have to go back and look at the actual plan to see if those regionalized number targets.
So I've got the data dashboard that you guys may be looking at that. 2018, we were at 32 fatalities. And then going forward the next 3 years, it jumped up to 47, 53. 2021, it dropped back down to 48. Now, text out when they've done their statewide goal, they're working off of thousands of data points. So you can project that line out in the future and say it's increasing by 2% or 1.7% each year. We want to decrease by 1%. You can set the target of what's reasonable, what's manageable. Because you get a large enough data set, that curve smooths out. With the numbers we've got, 32, 47. I mean, that's, when we do the math, I don't do math in my head well.
It's 50% increase.
Thank you. Then we go up by 5, okay, so maybe now it's a 10% increase, but we went down. So if we're going to say our goal is to go down by, X percent, the problem we're going to run into with our local data is our data jumps around too much to say that we're on a clear upward or downward trend. And I think there was a change between 2017 and 2018 about how they reported serious injuries and fatalities, so that, that number, it may be difficult to go back in time. Looking at the chart, 2017, 57 fatalities, and the next year it dropped to 32, and then it's back up to 47. So it becomes difficult to project out the trend to, and our goal is to go down. Let's get it to 32 this year, let's get it to 30 the next year. Ultimately, our goal is to prevent all fatalities, we know that. So I think with the working group, it may not be less of a, let's bring that curve down. It's going to have to be more targeted. Okay, of the fatalities we have, is there a common trend? Is it distracted driving? Is it a particular intersection? Is it? And I have long conversations in Casper about I-35 and I-14, and you get a crash and then it causes backup crashes. Is there some corridor that we know we're doing something on that's expected to have an impact, and eventually bring our numbers down? It's going to support bringing the state like. So our actions support the state goal, which is what this resolution is doing.
So something else to keep in mind too, and this is, we talk about the district all the time. So we could spend billions of dollars on a circuit court, making it as safe as possible.
Yeah.
But it always comes down to the driver, what they end up doing at the end of the game. And something else, if you want to trim the numbers down, yeah, you can draw a straight line going down to 0. What are we doing as regional planners for projects to making these corridors safe? Safety projects, and you kind of look at that as that if there is a hotspot, we do put a project out there that's going to address that, then we should anticipate this steep drop off in fatalities. And so that's something you probably need to look at on the planning side and the slope going down is that what are we doing to make this versus well, we want it to be 0 by 2050. If we don't do anything about it, it's fine. So
And it's easy to get, if you read enough of these crash reports, it's easy to get a little cynical and say, okay, we can idiot-proof the world's going to invent better idiots. There's a lot of education that can be done. Not to say it's not worth trying. I know Anita's really worked on the end of the street. Let's get that public information out. There's lots of education venues that this board, we may not have direct control of. So what can we control? Okay, the configuration of the road, signals, adding sidewalks, and we're preventing pedestrian. We know we're doing our part, but I think it's going to be less of a statistical analysis, more of a targeted hotspot, crash patterns, which is going to just take more time. But the data's there. Like I said, I've read those crash reports. They're being used.
Any other discussion? Any questions?
Got a typo on page 18 under the target total numbers, the lower table. Says on a note that the calendar year target for 2023 is 17,062. The table shows 17,819.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, we'll take a look at that. It looks like in the resolution, the number is correct. It should be 17,062, so. We'll double check all the numbers before we present the policy for the executive.
Further, so the numbers in the resolution should reflect the 5-year average.
Correct. Okay. Correct.
Further, seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion. Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion carries. Okay, agenda item 6 is a discussion and action item regarding the creation of KTMPO Workgroups. This is page 24 in your packet. As mentioned at the last PAC and policy board meeting, this is an initiative Judge Miller and Councilmember Long thought would be good for the KTMPO organization. What I have listed are some possible work groups for the update and revision of the KTMPO bylaws, especially with the new census numbers, because some of that stuff in the bylaws is population and area based. The safety target setting, a work group for that, as well as the KTMPO project scoring. Usually the TAC as a whole does that. Thought it may be better to have a smaller group work through that and then submit those to the TAC and the policy board accordingly. The thoughts are possibly 5 to 7 members on each of the work groups, with the bylaws being more policy board heavy and the safety targets being more policy board heavy, with the project scoring being more TAC participant heavy. With that, I'm open to any recommendations for persons on the TAC that would like to serve on any of these work groups. I know Judge Miller will be speaking to this at the policy board meeting next week. If you have interest on serving on a specific work group or whatever, please let us know. I don't know if we'll actually be appointing the work groups next week. There's a very good possibility if we have enough interest. If not, it may be pushed a month so that we can make those appointments appropriate.
We had a discussion with my city manager, our council members, for the safety and the budget scoring. All volunteer for those. But for the bylaws, our preference is that's really more elected officials. It's more of a bigger picture policy decision. So I may be involved in that one. More likely with our city manager, either Susan or Mayor Davis.
I'll volunteer with that.
Ryan, I'll jump in wherever you need me on any of them. I have a background in safety and done a lot of project scoring as well. But so either one or both, whatever.
Looks like we have 2 for the safety target setting, possibly Jason and Bob, but these will ultimately be up to the chair to determine. And then for the project scoring, right now I've got Jason and Daryl. Are there any other members from the TAC that'd be interested?
I would be fine.
Anybody else in project scoring?
I'll throw my project scoring.
Okay, that gets us 5 for that. 5 names to submit to the chair. Which then, I said that gives us 5 names for the project scoring work group. For the bylaws work group, right now, as I just wrote it, possibly somebody from Temple on the policy board side. Are there any members from TAC? Possibly just 2 members that would be interested in serving on that work group. That may just be a policy board work group.
Friday what it turns into.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to jump too far into this, but I mean, I hope you understand that kind of the, what I was trying to achieve is that even though most of us have a counterpart or some type of other person that's on the policy board, what I envision is being a little bit smaller group that kind of gets a little bit, ties tagged with policy board on very specific things, a little bit more intimate way. Not to say that, what we've done historically is good, bad, or otherwise. Just kind of explore a new avenue of how do we tie the two together. And again, without trying to create additional meetings just to say we're having meetings. I don't believe in that. I do think that, focused work groups can get a lot done in a more efficient manner than, larger groups oftentimes. And for those of you that volunteer for some reason, I appreciate that.
So right now we have this as an action item. I don't know that we need any action taken, because we're just going to submit these things to the chair.
Is it kind of the consensus? I mean, just so as we take this to the policy board, is the consensus of this group that the TAC probably does not need to be represented on the bylaws?
I don't want to volunteer for that committee, but my 2 cents are there's probably a good amount of technical information that is associated with the bylaws. Not sure. So I'm responding to your question, maybe 1 or 2 people be helpful to kind of offset some of the political.
And maybe it could be, a couple of the people that actually serve as the TAC policy board member.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my opinion.
No, I just didn't want to, when I talked with you, Ryan, I agree with you. I think the bylaws are more of the policy board's responsibility. But again, to give 1 or 2. And so as we present this to the policy board, I want to make sure that I'm delivering the correct message, that even though we may not have necessarily identified someone from the TAC to be on that we will reserve the right to have 1 or 2 positions with that committee. Is that, am I phrasing that or describing that pretty aptly?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, Bob, you hit on what I was thinking about this, that you can start looking at the census population numbers, demographics, distributions. We've looked in the past at counting road miles density, per county, and all kinds of different numerical ways to slice and say, what's the, when it comes to representations, that's been one of the topics. And, that may be a technical thing, that may be something, some member of this board would weigh in on, and maybe something staff can just do, and also provide that to us. And having been through both these discussions, both on this board and other groups, is that the statistics will inform it, but it probably won't define the answer. There will be it'll be a political decision, which I'm asking for the elected officials to weigh in on that. Subjective factors will come into play. But I have that basis in the numbers. At least start the discussion.
Good. Okay. So like I said, I don't think we need action on this item, because I'm just going to take the names that were given to policy board, unless
Well, is the action to recommend the creation of these three boards or these three committees?
Without the names, yeah.
Without any names or, the defined, but I think that's
That's the appropriate action. All right, is there any further question, comments, discussion on the work groups? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to create the three work groups.
Second.
Second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, agenda item 7 is a discussion and action item regarding recommending approval of amendments to the FY23-26 Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, and the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the MTP, for projects. This is pages 14 through 24 in your packet, James.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. A note on this one, some of you may have seen an agenda where there were 2 projects listed. One was the Temple SH95 project. After further discussions with TxDOT, we are not considering action on that. We're going to go back and have more discussions with them before potentially amending that. So that's why it's not on here. Just wanted to clear that up for everybody. There is one project that we are considering amending, and before I get into that, I'll just give a quick reminder for our 2 plans. We have a short range plan, which is the TIP, and that details current projects expected to begin construction during the next 4-year period. It currently covers FY23 to 26. Then this other plan is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is our long range plan, and includes a longer list of projects that are expected to be funded, and it's basically constrained based on projections for expected funding. The one project for amendment today is T4501 West Main Street. There's a typo, that should be Luther Curtis Road. The city of Troy had sent a request to the MPO to reduce the project limits and decrease the construction costs for this project. They're running into some inflation issues to bring the project back in line with the original approved amount. They requested these changes. The previous funding was The previous funding was 3.2 million of category 7. And the new funding is 2.9, I think it's just under 3 million of category 7 funding. So we are adding some category 7 back to our pool. The original limits were Lee Mays Boulevard to Church Avenue to 0.4 miles west of Lee Mays Boulevard. And the new limits are Church Avenue to Lee Mays Boulevard. They took out that 0.4 mile section, and I believe there's also a traffic signal there going to more. The let date is still 2023, and that's all I have. Is there any questions?
So just so everybody's aware, and we've encountered this before in previous fundings, this technically would change the scope of the project. The reason we're bringing it before you is while that may, in some instances, have an impacted on the project selection process and where it scored and was prioritized and funded, this was Troy's priority project, which is why it was funded in the first place, because it originally scored closer to the bottom of the list. So that's why this one is still, even with scope reduction, the funding reduction being brought to stay where it is in the funding cycle, because it was already their priority project.
And it's not on here, but just so everyone knows, the description of this project is staying the same. It's to rehabilitate and widen West Main Street, Luther Curtis Road from 2 to 3 lanes, add a center turn lane, and install a 12-foot shared use path along one side of the road. So they're doing the same project, they're just not doing it as far, constructing it as far as they were originally planning.
Did you ever say a reduction?
Correct. Yeah.
Seeing the difference. The previous funding versus the new funding.
The slide is incorrect. If you look at in the packet on the tip sheets, the original funding was 3.2 million. Those numbers should just be flipped. Yeah, it's a typo. Yep.
Any other questions on this amendment? Comments? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Make the motion, we approve the amendment.
Motion.
Public involvement.
involvement.
Yeah. Recommend we initiate the public involvement for the amendment.
Second. Further questions, comments, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, agenda item 8 is a discussion item only regarding resolution 2023-02, supporting the 2023 transit asset management performance targets established by Hill Country Transit District. James.
Ryan. This is another resolution that we pass annually. It's regarding transit asset management performance rule, which looks at state of good repair and transit asset management for Hill Country Transit District. Daryl and Hill Country, they provide this information to us. They have a transit asset management plan where they evaluate all of their assets, and they have grades and benchmarks for those assets. And KTMPO, we adopt this resolution in support of their targets and their numbers. I believe we have a couple images here, and I'll let Daryl speak to anything he wants to. But the benchmark for their 3 categories is less than 30% exceeding the useful life.
Good morning, everyone. This is a fairly sizable packet. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I will focus on one page for you. And James, I don't have your packet in front of me, but it's page 13 in the TAMP Transit Asset Management Plan. Whatever page that.
I don't.
You have it?
We don't have it in this packet. We sent out the whole TAMP separately.
All right, so if you have the TAMP, it's on page 13. The title of it is Transit Asset Management Plan Useful Life Benchmarks. So you all have heard me speak before about how COVID has impacted us with regard to supply chain and some of those things. I'm going to first read the same page out of our 2020 report. Our goal, we're measuring all of our assets. By the way, the TAMP also includes in it something called the state of good repair. So it's really just a mechanism by which it's very routine. We do it every year, and it's a mechanism by which we inspect all of our buses, we inspect all of our equipment in the shop, tire balancing machines, and our facilities. Those are the 3 categories: rolling stock, maintenance equipment, and buildings. The goal, going back to 2020 and continuing now, is equal to or less than 30% of our pieces of equipment. So let's just use rolling stock as an example. Of all of the buses we have, we want 30% or less to be outside of their useful life. So in other words, we want 70% inside their useful life. And we measure useful life by both miles and years. So these large buses you see running around, they have a life of 12 years or 500,000 miles, whichever comes first. And every piece of equipment has a similar line in the sand that defines its useful life. In 2020, we had a goal of equal to or less than 30%. Our rolling stock was 33.6%. So we did not meet that goal, but just barely missed it. The year prior to that, we did meet it. Maintenance, equipment, we were at 25.6. Our goal was 30%. Buildings, 0 of them, 0% is beyond their useful life. And that's still true to this day. We're not really going to talk to the facilities. So that's 2020. If you look at page 13 in the 2023 plan, which is, look, the inspection took place in 2022, so it's at the end of 22, that snapshot in time really right now. Rolling stock, our categorical target is still equal to or less than 30%, but we currently today have 75.4% of our rolling stock is outside of its useful life. Huge number. And I've got 4 or 5 years worth here, and it's just progressively getting worse. And it's really directly due to the pandemic and the supply chain issues. And I wanted to tell you just a quick story to demonstrate this. We bought 3 brand new buses a while back. Actually, it was last year, beginning of the year. We actually we're in the process of returning those buses because they were delivered to us. We took receipt of them. There are 3 buses on hand, but they literally do not work. Every time you put them on the street, we tow them in within 30 minutes to an hour. They just don't run. And we researched it. We've done, by the way, I want to preface this with our maintenance department, great maintenance department. They performed excellent for years. And I'm stunned that they're keeping the buses that we have running as well as they do. But these were 3 brand new buses, and components, V-drive components in the transmission that were just falling apart, breaking. We would fill them with oil, and we would literally watch it leak right back out. There were all kinds of problems with it. So we are in the process of returning those 3 buses. The reason I bring that up is because total cost on those 3 buses, I think, was $1,048,000. $280-some thousand of that was category 7 money. So it's money that came through the MPO to us. And so I want to let you know that we have issues with those 3 buses. We're in the process of returning them. That's 3 buses on hand from a manufacturer, XYZ manufacturer. We also have had 7 smaller buses, paratransit buses, on order from XYZ manufacturer, the exact same manufacturer. So we had already taken possession of the 3 fixed routes, so that's a more complicated issue. The 7 paratransits, we went ahead and just canceled the order. They were due to start assembly in January, so the middle of December, we canceled that order. We will apply that in both cases, fixed route and we will apply that money on new vehicles and probably smaller vehicles to go hand in hand with some of the initiatives that we are working on for later this year. Judge Miller talking about the transitions that Hendrickson Transportation Group is working on, et cetera, which we'll go over with our Hill Country Transit Board in February, the 4th of February. So anyway, I wanted to point out we are not meeting the goals of our state of good repair because we can't get parts, and if we do get parts, the steel is just not good. It's literally brittle. It's literally breaking. So we've got issues going on with that, and I just wanted to disclose that to the group overall. I'll do the same policy board. But the numbers as they stand, unfortunately, rolling stock, 75.4% of our rolling stock is not in its useful life right now. 54.5% of our maintenance equipment is not in its useful life in the buildings. Useful life. We make every effort to rotate our vehicles and our equipment as the useful life expires. We put it on the auction, we sell those things, and through grants and other mechanisms, we replace them. And typically, as we get rid of buses, first we buy new ones, and then we do an auction and get rid of our worst ones. That's how we typically run it. But for the last several years, since the pandemic's been going on, we have not had an auction. We're using every old bus we can. So that is also making these numbers appear a little worse than they are. We've kept all of our buses for the past 3 years. So our numbers are higher, and we're keeping the ones that have passed the useful life. But I just want to disclose, it is a major problem that we are experiencing. And again, our maintenance department's doing a great job, but we've got to work with the manufacturers and suppliers. They're doing the best they can, but it's an issue. Just want to let you know. And open it up to questions related to PAN or state of good repair.
Is that actually giving you any indication on turn around and getting portable buses?
They're not surprisingly very quiet. Which, Judge Miller, this will be an item that we'll talk about at the February board meeting. There is a possibility of some litigation there, which we want to brief the board on and get your approval to move forward. There's actually 2 different paths that we can take. We've done some research with our attorney. We clearly fall underneath of the Texas lemon law. Get the legislative with it, but the Texas lemon law. We clearly could pursue it through the lemon law. We have also been approached by other manufacturers, by other transit operators around the country, mostly within the regions that we work in, the FTA region that we work in. They've approached us and invited us to participate in a class action lawsuit against this particular manufacturer. So we could go either way or both ways. We're talking to attorneys, and we've notified the FTA. Victor, we've notified TxDOT about it as well. So we're jumping through the hoops, trying to figure out the best path forward. And we're hoping to have some recommendations for the board.
I was just going to say, is FTA offering any additional guidance or assistance to the districts like you guys that are all thinking about doing a joint thing, because they're clearly aware that it's a problem within FTA?
When we notified FTA, we were notifying of the 3 buses and the fact that we had an order of 7 paratransit buses. So, and I sent the letter to the regional administrator for FTA. So it went right to the top of where it needs to go. It is an issue for them, but at the same time, it was 3 and 7 buses. They were not, at that time when we were talking with them, they were not aware that there was potential class action suit coming involved. So I think it will, it's on their radar screen, and I think it will be elevated on their radar screen. When I was speaking to our target, or to my counterpart at FTA, he did tell me that it's a serious, the supply chain issue is very serious nationwide, and is the highest priority for them. These are results or symptoms of that bigger problem. So they're aware, and yes, we're.
So they're not penalizing you because
No.
the issues you're having meeting performance targets based on supply.
Absolutely. And I don't anticipate them to do that. In the one-on-one conversations I've had, they're very understanding. They haven't done anything official, but I think they understand exactly what is going on.
Okay.
No, you're good. Yeah, Daryl, I was going to say, because I mean, my memory is always the greatest. I believe the total numbers for our rolling stock is increased slightly. Is that correct?
It has, but
Well, I was gonna say, and that's due to the fact that we have not sold off
Exactly.
in the last couple of years.
Right.
So in doing that, that is going to skew this overall number slightly, because it is older stock that you would normally sell off, correct? And if, I remember some of our past discussions, part of that is, under the FTA rules, historically, you're prevented, the Hill Country was prevented from quote unquote cannibalizing, from, we used to call it, controlled substitution.
Right.
Because that kind of gets into some funding issues. But I believe, based off of some of our past meetings and conversations, there have been some allowances for that due to the fact that they're having, repair parts, not just new vehicles, but repair parts coming in have less. So I say all that to set out, I want to highlight that even though this number is significantly higher than 2020, I do not believe it is quite as bad as what it is. I mean, obviously, it's not good. But there are some things that Hill Country Transit is doing to ensure that the fleet is still meeting its daily requirements, daily needs, which what they're doing is then causing this number to look a little bit more inflated. Is what I'm trying to add to it.
You're right. If we were to get past this issue tomorrow, magically, the supply chain issue is cured, we could order leaf springs and get them in and get them on bus 739. That bus would be out in a matter of 2 days. That would help significantly. You're correct. FTA does not usually like us putting used parts onto buses. They frown on that a lot. I did notify them in writing with a letter that we were at a point where we either do that or we have to start canceling some of our service. They don't want that any more than you do or I do. No one wants that. I gave them a caveat at the end of the letter simply saying, this is how we're proceeding. If you have objections, please let me know. Otherwise, we will proceed as I described. And they never got back to me. So I'm taking that as we're okay, move forward. And I can tell you for certain, we're by far not the only agency in the country or in the state or even in this region that is doing that very thing. So consequently, yes, we have 3 years worth of buses in these numbers that normally we would have already gotten rid of, which inflates the numbers. If tomorrow it was fixed, we would auction off a lot of these buses, and that in and of itself would lower the number. Makes sense.
Any other questions for Daryl? This is just a discussion item. Any questions or further discussion?
One more comment I had, you're right, the date on this resolution is also correct. We will update that, and we're bringing it before policy board next week, and then it will come back next month for approval from
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9. This is the discussion item only regarding resolution 2023-03, supporting the 2023 Public Transportation Agency Safety Plans, PTAS, performance targets established by Hill Country Transit District.
Similar resolution, but a little different. This is also addressing safety, but specifically with our public transportation agency, which is Hill Country Transit District. They have a plan called the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, or PTAS, that is a new plan. There's there are targets in there sort of similar to the safety targets that we in resolution 2023-01, just make a similar comment to the last resolution. The date at the end of the same resolution is incorrect, and we will be bringing this back next month for approval. There are a couple tables here with targets, and Daryl, I'll let you speak to those.
Yeah, these are driven historically, and these are actually very, very good numbers. In the interest of time, I'm not going to dwell a lot on the PTAS, other than to say that it was adopted and approved by both TxDOT and then our board. I think it was March 24th last year. We put it before our board again, and really the main substantial change was just putting Stephen Beck's name and replacing Terry's. So I don't know, it's page 5, if you have a copy of it, is the signature line. I want to take this just a second to introduce, where's Raymond at? Oh, yeah. Raymond Torres is our new interim general manager. He took Steve's place. And you heard me speak about Raymond before. He's got a great resume, great background in transit, and he's helping us a lot in a lot of different categories. His name needs to be in here. He actually did. He signed this yesterday. So I do have a copy of it that is signed by him. It has not, at this point, been approved by our board. And Judge Miller, I was going to ask you if you have a preference. Normally, we would put this before the board, the Hill Country Transit Board, in September. It's just his signature, so it's a slam dunk action item. If you want, we could put it on February's board and get it out of the way. But it's just, the only difference is going to be the signature line. Or we can just run with it until September and put it before the board. Is there a preference?
Really, I don't have a preference. I mean, I think within KTMPO, I don't think there's going to be an issue in addressing the resolution, and so that we can keep this on track, you know, as far as timing, and not put it off another, I guess it'll be almost 2 months. With TAC would be able to, or TAC or KTMPO would be able to address it if we wait. I think I know at least I'm comfortable with that.
To go ahead and put it before the board in February?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I think that's the cleanest way to do it. It's a little bit repetitive for the board, seeing the same twice in 1 year, 3 times in a year and a half.
Okay, it'll clean it up.
Thank you.
And I'd like to see Raymond's name on there.
Any other questions on the PTAS? That document was sent out with our package. All right, so no further questions or comments. We will move to agenda item 10, which is a discussion item regarding public input received through December 2022.
So we present general comments that we receive through email and Facebook and phone calls to the TAC and policy board. There's a fuller spreadsheet in your packet, but here is the comment we received since the beginning of FY23. We presented last month to the TAC. We haven't had any new general comments about KTMPO transportation in general since last meeting. Oh, yes. We, as Ryan mentioned, is that update the Bell County Thoroughfare, and we were out for public comment that recently for 30 days, and we got quite a few public comments. Because those are regarding a specific plan, we have a separate document that lists all of those and has some analysis. We presented that to the commissioners, but if anyone on the TAC would like a copy of that, we can send it out for reference. There's a lot of comments. Some of them may pertain to general KTMPO activities, but
That's on the website. Is that the latest version?
I think there might be a slightly newer version. I'll double check and we made some changes late last month based on some comments received during the public comment period and from the meeting. Your comments, yes. I made those changes. I added that.
Any questions on the public involvement, public input? Like I said, if you're interested in the other, we can send that out and just spit out as follow-up.
We can have it follow up.
And then as we continue to go through that process, as we gather more comments, we'll update that document and share it accordingly as we go through the program. All right. Moving on to agenda item 11, this is member comments. Do any members have any comments for the tab?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. All right, seeing none, we will adjourn the meeting at 10:31. Thank you, everybody.